Right now will be presentation, and new part in our presentation belongs to blockchain. As I mentioned, this April we announced our new fund, the BB Fund, Banking on Blockchain Fund in London. We created this fund with Chris Skinner, author of Digital Bank and Value Web bestsellers, David Breer, one of the famous specialists in blockchain area, and Simon Taylor, ex-senior vice president of Barclays for blockchain, or as Business Insider Tech Media named him veteran in blockchain area. We united together and created the BB Fund in London. We want to be like gateway for banks to discover this industry, because right now it's a little bit too early to invest directly to blockchain startups from banking side, but in 1-2 years it will be too late. And we want to become like best friend for banks, insurance companies to discover these areas through our expertise, through our specialists, through our pipeline projects. And with this chapter of our presentation, I want to introduce you partner of Life's Reader, also our investment director, Igor Pesin. He will talk about blockchain from our side for next 15-20 minutes. You want to use this microphone? No? Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'd like to talk about blockchain today, and as Slava mentioned, we decided to split our funds. So we have Fintech fund and we have blockchain fund. Why we did this is because blockchain right now is, I would say, the most fastest growing segment of Fintech, and maybe it's also a lot of hype, a lot of noise about this industry. However, there are not so many results in terms of the business achieved through this technology. But as Slava just told, we expect that in a couple of years, blockchain will be the most important segment in fintech, which will change the whole industry. Can I? Yeah. To start, I believe that most of you know what is blockchain. So basically, blockchain is, in a simple word, is a database. So it's just another way to store information, to share information, and it can be used in many industries, not only in financial technology. But financial technology was the first industry where blockchain was used. And this application is Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is cryptocurrency and which use blockchain as a technology. And Bitcoin was the first application, and it helped to make blockchain famous across the world, actually. And a lot of people know blockchain because of Bitcoin. However, areas where you can apply blockchain much wider than cryptocurrency. And today I'd like to talk about why and Bitcoin is important and how you can use it. So first, why do we need banks, basically? So banks now do not store money physically. Banks are tech companies who just know how many money all of you, I am storing in the bank. So it's like a database. And why do we need banks? Because we need somebody to trust to some organization. So when I go to Starbucks and I buy coffee, why the merchant knows how much money I have? Because merchant asks bank if I have this money. So, and that is why this is how they know how I actually transfer money. Blockchain is a technology which allows not to use any middlemen like banks. So if I transfer money, let's say to you, blockchain just is a database where I report to this database, and you ask this database if I have this data, this money. So in I believe you use torrents, like BitTorrents. So it's like when movies are stored on different computers. The same is blockchain for money. So actually the information about your account is stored in different computers, in different servers across the world. What advantages it provides? So first of all, it's you don't need to store information in one place, like in the bank. You can store on different smartphones, on different computers, and that is why it cannot be hacked. You cannot hack all the computers or all the servers. So this is much more secure than to store data at some place. Second one is the speed. So, for example, if I'm a bank and my server is somewhere in Australia, I have to ask server in Australia. If you use blockchain, you can get data from the nearest server, which is in the city or even in this building. So blockchain is much more secure, faster, and cheaper for usage. Blockchain started as protocols. So there are 3 layers which exist right now in blockchain. Like the first one is the database itself. It was Bitcoin database, then it appeared different, more sophisticated, more advanced protocols like Ethereum, like Hyperledger, and different. So that is some kind of language. And Bitcoin language is the simplest, so you cannot use it to all applications that you create in blockchain. That is why people like Vitalik Buterin, who is founder of Ethereum, started to invent new languages of blockchain. Next one is middleware. So middleware is actually the different platforms that allow you to build the application that you can use in the real life. And interface is different businesses created over the blockchain. So it can be remittance when you transfer money to each other. It can be cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. It can be non-fintech applications, which I will cover later. So why right now blockchain is so, I would say, popular and noisy in the fintech industry? So if you look at the fintech, we covered today neobanks or MPOS, different acquiring businesses. All of them work with banks. When people tell that fintech will disrupt banking industry or financial industry, it's not true actually. Most of fintech startups work with banks. So that is why it's not about disruption. It's only about innovations in the financial and banking space. When we talk about blockchain can disrupt banking, because blockchain, the idea of the blockchain is that they don't need banks, that they don't need middlemen who control money flow, who control where your money is stored. So that is why a lot of, I would say, most influential bankers think about blockchain because they don't want to lose their business. They don't want to be disrupted by the new technology. And so we can talk about banks, and all of them, like the biggest bank, UBS, Goldman Sachs, they started to invest into blockchain. They started to apply blockchain technology into their core banking business. Also, some companies like Nasdaq. Nasdaq is a stock exchange in US, the biggest one. It has billions of transactions every day. They want to use blockchain to actually make it faster, make it cheaper. And they already started to make all transactions in Nasdaq, trying to experiment with moving all transactions on Nasdaq to blockchain. As I mentioned, these bankers, the biggest bankers, started to invest into blockchain to understand where the financial and banking world actually go. And if you want to make some kind of startup company based on blockchain, these guys potentially are buyers of your companies, of your technology. They already spending during the last 2 years was invested almost $1 billion into blockchain. It's only 10% of the investments into fintech, but these guys are ready to spend money. And if you have a good company, if you create a blockchain company, you always need to keep in mind that these guys will buy your company. Right now they want to, it's not, by the way, it's not because they want to make business with you, they just want to be safe. It's safer for them to spend $5 million on $10 million and not, to be disrupted. No bankers here, I hope. Already there are more than 500 blockchain startups. Most of them actually are related to cryptocurrencies and exchanges of cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin and others. This is not because cryptocurrency is the most attractive area of blockchain, but blockchain started with cryptocurrencies. That is why it's the most advanced segment right now. However, blockchain already is applied in for payments, for remittances, for example, in I give you some. Yeah, so these are not financial sectors where you can apply blockchain. For example, so let's think about this, about the most secure database, where you need this database. For example, for real estate. I believe in Kuala Lumpur, as in many cities, it's very difficult to understand. There is no one united database where there are all real estate, all houses of Kuala Lumpur, and you can know who owns this. Because, most of them are on paper and stored in some buildings, I don't know. So, for example, in Georgia and in Estonia, they started to keep all records about all real estate in these countries in blockchain. It allows to all people to get an access to this database, to know who owns what. It cannot be hacked because it's impossible to hack blockchain, but there is one case regarding Ethereum, and I will cover it a bit later. And that is why these countries look at blockchain to solve this problem of keeping records about real estate. Another simple example is shares of companies. There is a company, Autonomous, in Singapore. So let's say you as a startup, as a company, you launched your legal entity. And how do you know who owns your shares? You go to the government body and they store it as paper, as you know, you have a share certificate, and then you send it to some shareholders, and there is no database. So again, blockchain is used, for example, to store information about shareholders of the company. So as I mentioned, the industry is growing. However, I would say that right now there is no real business application of blockchain which generates money. So if you look at these startups, maybe 5% of them may earn any money. I don't say they make profit, but at least companies who are generating money, generating revenue, only few percentage of these, all of them. It's normal because it's a technology which is quite new, which is actually appeared a few years ago, and now many people around the world, many startups around the world are trying to find the application to this technology. We understand the benefits of it, but to get to the point where you make the real business, it takes time. So even if investments into this industry is more than $1 billion, it doesn't mean that this industry is big. Right now, it's only about innovative companies. It's about small, young startups who started to make some products over the blockchain. That is why I believe that if you think about fintech, if you think about starting a company in fintech space, blockchain is the most lucrative area for this, because there is no competition, there is high demand, there are a lot of potential buyers, and quite easy, to my mind, to attract money to start your company. We track around 100 blockchain companies to invest. We have short list of this. I believe that these companies are the most promising from our opinion. Yeah, so I highlighted only one company here, which is Everledger, and I just give you an example how blockchain is used. So Everledger is a company it is blockchain company and works in a diamond market. So if you look at diamond market, there is a lot of fraud. There is a lot of fake diamonds, stolen diamonds, which exist on the market. This company created a database of all diamonds, and all diamonds are unique. Unique because of weight, different angles, transparency. So each diamond is unique. They make a digital photo of 3D digital photo of these diamonds and put it into Everledger, which is blockchain-based database. So each diamond gets a unique number, and then you can track all the transactions which happens with this diamond. For example, it was sold somewhere, and this number is used to put it to update the information about this diamond. It was moved from US to UK. Again, in database there is an updated information about this. How they use it to make money. For example, you go to bank and you want to get a loan, and you use a diamond as a collateral for this loan. If you do not have any information from where this diamond was sold, how did you get it, bank will refuse your application, because maybe your diamond was stolen, maybe it is fake, maybe somebody will come later to the bank and tell them that it's my diamond, so please give it back to me. So if they have this unique code in the blockchain, you can easily tell to the bank, look, I purchased this diamond from this guy, I paid it, and I actually own this. This is and another example is insurance company. So again, how you can insure the diamond if you don't know its provenance, if you don't know where it comes from. With Everledger database, you know all the story about your diamond and you can insure it. That's it, I believe. So in general, just the conclusion that blockchain is the very new industry. It's only technology. Right now, it's quite, I would say, perspective technology which has to be applied somewhere. There is no businesses in the blockchain space, and we expect that new talents like you are, young startups, will create the really important for society businesses that will change the whole financial industry, because blockchain changes the way how we trust people, because you don't need to trust to the Bank of Niagara or other banks. Technology is the most trustful source of information. You cannot, if you cannot hack the database, if you are sure that your information is stored in many computers, and it works much better if you trust to any bank, because banks are managed by people, by humans, so it's always can be has some mistakes. Technology has no mistakes. That is why blockchain is the future of the financial industry, and it will change the world. And in our hands how to participate in it. Thank you.
So regarding questions and answers.
One very quick question. If we want to learn about the blockchain as a technology, where should we go to? I mean, talking about database here, you're buying Oracle, and so on and so forth. So for blockchain, where do we go to learn this technology?
To learn. All of these corporates like IBM, Microsoft are trying to experiment with blockchain, but there is no. If you want to study, for example, finance or banking, you can go to banks because you know that banks are doing this for hundreds of years. If you want to learn about blockchain, there is no any source of information because it's a new technology. It's only 2-3 years old, so it's actually we are who create the future of this technology. But I would say that, for example, Ethereum, which is one of the biggest blockchain company, they have some kind of courses, lectures, webinars. You can go to the website and they have a lot of information about the basics of blockchain. Ethereum.com or .org.
I would like to ask something is, how do we ensure our safety of our business when we're using Bitcoin? Because a few years back, there are some company bankrupt because of Bitcoin. The company being hacked, right?
You mean hacked? It was a DAO who was hacked. You mean this case?
Yes, correct.
So yes, so it was not hacked in the common meaning of this word. It was one guy just find the error, a mistake in the algorithm, and he used this to get some money from this. So this is very new industry, and when you create, let's say, I don't know, CRM, you can be hacked by some people because just it's a new technology that has to be tested in the real world. The same is for any of fintech startups. Even banks are hacked, or Pentagon in US can be hacked. So it takes time to make it absolutely secure. It's impossible to start from the beginning and be 100% safe. But if you look at the last statistics of the hackers' attacks to different blockchain projects, it's almost zero. So industry is getting mature. There are a lot of companies who are actually working on security of these companies, and at the end of the day, it will come to the most safe, I would say, technology in the world in finance.
Hi. So where can I get the blockchain? Where can I get it? Where can I get it?
No. So it's like the question where you can get C++ or Java language. So there are different languages. So Bitcoin language is #1, Ethereum, Hyperledger, IBM. It's open. I mean, it's libraries of code, but it's not that you can get. You get an access to a library, and then you have to code by yourself, like a coder, to create some applications. These libraries are open. You can go to different websites like Ethereum and use the.
Because I'm not really into IT, so how it's supposed to be explained in maybe like another kind of events. You know what I mean? How can you explain it for me, like which I don't understand anything about IT?
It's so. For example, if you want to write a book, you need some language, yes, and you use Malay language or English, doesn't matter yet, but you use letters, etc. So the same is for blockchain. If you want to create some business over the blockchain, you use some basic lines of code which already exist. So you just go to the website of those who created this language. But we don't know who created English, yeah? We don't know who created Russian, or it doesn't matter. But you can use it. The same as for blockchain. You even cannot know who invented Ethereum language or Bitcoin language, but you can use it. You're just going to the website of these organizations and use it.
So, meaning blockchain is a book? No, blockchain is a language, and
yes.
my application is a book.
Correct.
Arcade City. Have you heard of Arcade City? Whereby the blockchain actually encompasses the entire workforce? Arcade City. Arcade City is actually share right. It's like an Uber, but the entire system is blockchain.
Okay.
I think maybe that's pretty new. Yeah. It's quite new. It's quite new. I launched maybe 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago.
Okay. No, I don't know. Sorry. Yes, certainly. So it's an absolutely encrypted language. So there is no any information that you can be leaked because it's encrypted.
Hi.
Sorry.
You mentioned that the blockchain uses distributed ledgers, right?
Correct.
So in a closed system, does it mean that you need sufficient nodes to make it or something? Is there like for example, if I want to adopt blockchain for storing certain kinds of data, mainly transactional data, how do I make sure that there are enough nodes distributed? Is there a standard or something?
There is no standard, but usually, for example, yes, some corporates use blockchain inside the systems. So usually it requires dozens of servers or computers, at least. And as more you have, is better for safety. Different. We can share some websites, and we will pass it to Bikesh with this presentation, and he will distribute it between all of you.
Hi, I'd just like to ask, what are the ecosystem of blockchain? It means that before we construct blockchain, what are the criteria? What are the ecosystem required for that blockchain technology to be implemented successfully? Thank you.
So first of all, there are different industries where you can apply blockchain. So right now in the world, the biggest industry is actually finance, banks. So that is why most of startups work with banks. So banks have some kind of sandboxes for blockchain, or there are different consortiums like R3. So basically, right now, blockchain ecosystem is built over the banking industry. Another big consumer of blockchain applications is actually government. So second, like central banks or different ministries also trying to experiment with blockchain. Number three is enterprises. So enterprises, like especially technological enterprises like Microsoft, IBM, they are also very involved into blockchain ecosystem creation, and I would say that maybe they will become leaders in terms of building some new products.
Yeah, you mentioned, again, back to, I'm trying to imagine, right, where, say, one bank, say in Malaysia, one bank decides to go with a blockchain kind of technology, give it a chance to validate and store certain transactions. But then,
Because in the banking system, you're talking about between different institutions, and the other bank are still on their basic client-server architecture with database and whatnot. So are they able? Are you able to interface between something that's a blockchain ledger, or you know how you used to validate your transactions, and the old world of doing things? How does it come together? Or must they all come together?
Yeah,
at
I
one
understand. So banks try not to experiment by themselves, and they are becoming parts of different consortiums, like Ripple, for example. Ripple is a company which allows blockchain remittance between countries. So Ripple works with more than 20 banks across the world, and they actually connect different banks from different countries. Or, for example, R3, which is consortium of 40 plus banks, including leading banks in the world like UBS and Goldman Sachs. They actually built this consortium to connect different banks. And yes, you are right. So if blockchain cannot be under one bank, it should be like a standard. And that is why right now blockchain is working to create some kind of standards for the whole banking industry.
So if I understand you and I distill what you said correctly, if it is a matter of standards, I mean, if you want to implement blockchain, it cannot be implemented in silos, but it's a matter of industrial standard. How much sense does it make to go away and build the product on its own? Since you require the buy-in of an entire industry, and you're talking so many players.
Again, blockchain can be used in different industries and for different applications. So, for example, Ripple is only about remittance. If you talk about real estate ledger or shareholding ledger or different types of, there are a lot of industries where you can use it, where you can apply this. But in terms of this kind of, standards, especially international standards, yes, it's quite difficult to right now to enter this market to fight with guys like Ripple or R3. But 2 years ago, R3 or Ripple was few talented guys who was sitting in the room like this, and they created these companies. So, and now they create the whole standards for the whole industry. But it's only a small piece of what can be done using blockchain.